by the working people, it's always a pleasure.
Right. All right, so this topic, I don't think that it needs to be a political topic. I think it's more of a common sense topic, understanding of sorts. So, are we agreeing that we wouldn't inject any politics into the discussion?
Well, we need to be specific here. Politics and partisan politics is something totally different.
Right.
You know, politics is the way of life, and the fact that the working people are standing up for their bread and butter, it can be considered to be politics. But if you go the partisan line, then it's a different ball game. But this is a bread and butter issue. It's a bread and butter issue, and that is what we would stick to.
All right. So let's start off. To hear the how did we get here kind of conversation. How did we get here in a place where we are right now, where we had the children losing about 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so of school? Government are at loggerhead with workers. There is back and forth like it's an election or something. Everybody take one side or the other. There's a lot of internal fighting. The prime minister making all sorts of statements, and the workers are not happy. They're striking. They're out. How did we get to this point where we are right now, Kem?
Right, George, and the viewers and listeners out there, we need to understand firstly that just on the eve of the election, the recent general election here in Grenada, the government invited the unions to sign a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
Where in that document, it promised, the government promised a number of things. Pensions, and pensions here is interpreted as pensionable benefits. It speaks to gratuity, it speaks to, anything you're supposed to get after you retire. So it was quite understood by the unions and everybody in that room that the issue of pension has been dealt with and gratuity will come. In other words, it is enshrined in the Pension Act, Cap 233, that it speaks to gratuity and pensionable benefits and so on, compensation and so on. So the unions signed that, and the party NNP, of course, was in power at the time and still in power now. They got a great boost because everybody came from that room smiling. The working people and the government, they're all on the same page and everything is nice and dandy. Then when the government or the NNP came into power, they got all 15 seats, and it's time to fulfill the promises made to the working people, the unions. And then you heard from the government, look, we can't give you 25%, we're only giving you 2%. And then the union said, no, we will not accept that, because in our discussion, agreement, conversation for the many days, even, before the actual signing of the MOU, we agreed that the working people will get a decent gratuity of 25%, and they would get their pension.
Yeah, but
so
the 25%, the 25% was never in the MOU that was signed by the unions.
Yeah, we established that, but I am simply saying it is in law. If you take a time and you go in the Pension Act, you would see it there how much. In fact, the Constitution itself speaks of gratuity, though the amount is not in the Constitution, but the Pension Act speaks of it.
Right. So
it is well understood that the 25% gratuity must be paid.
Right.
Even if the government is able to say, okay, I can't pay you the full 25%, but what I would do is to issue you some bonds, which would mature, 5 or 6 years after you retire, and then I would give you upfront a 10 or 15%. In other words, the government must come to some form of agreement with the unions that speaks to gratuity. You see, George, gratuity is an advance lump sum. It's not a loan. It's an advance lump sum, saying to the worker, thank you for your service. I know you have responsibilities. You may have your mortgage. You may have your rent, your utility bills. You have to carry on with your normal life. Right. So I'm giving you this gratuity, this package to cushion the effect, and I would deduct, so to speak, over 12 years and a half. The same thing, but you can't call it a loan really. It's the same thing. I'm going to deduct it and give you less pension. So your pension will be less, but I'm going to give you upfront payment. But you see, the unions understand what their brothers and sisters have gone through. They have seen colleagues of theirs retire and go right back into poverty, unable to pay their mortgage, because many a times you go to the bank, you work with government, and you get a loan at, let's say, 35 years. It means when you retire at 60, you still have 5 years to pay, because they give you 30 years, sorry, a 30-year period, 30 years to pay back that loan. It means when you're 65 years, you will complete the process of paying back that loan.
Right.
So that gratuity will help you to cushion that effect, to pay some money so you would not run into problems. So we have seen so many public workers retire after serving the government for 35 years in some cases, some instances, and they go right back into poverty, where they have to go and cut bush on the side of the road, or go to the member of parliament and beg them for some favor, or maybe go into some security company to be security in the night at the age of 60, 61, 62. I mean, all the workers are asking for is to retire with grace and dignity. And that is what they are struggling for. And when I say workers, I am not just singling out teachers. The teachers, they are leading the charge. They are leading the way.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the police officer, the prison officer, the nurse, the person who works in a ministerial complex or any government department, the teachers, they all are looking forward to a gratuity package,
right,
at the end of their time working.
So
and George, I need to say this,
yeah,
Junior.
go ahead.
It is important to note that the politicians, they are taken care of. In fact, it was this administration, meaning the NNP, while we don't really want to go into the partisan politics here, it is fact, the NNP administration that Dr. Mitchell was a part of passed a law speaking to the politicians to make sure that they get, upon completing 4 years in the parliament, they serve as a minister and they complete 4 years in the parliament, they would get a big fat gratuity, in some instances $75,000 and more. That's just for the 4 years of service in the parliament. If they are reappointed or elected again, or re-elected for another 4 years, and 4 years is considered to be a term in the law that was passed, that 4 years again they would get at the end another big fat gratuity. So within 8 years, the politician would have collected at least $150,000 as gratuity. And because they complete that 8 years, they qualify for a pension at the age of 55 years, not 60, 55 years, and it will come directly from the consolidated fund, where the money is for the government of this country.
So you're saying
it is unfair.
So you're saying that on the topic of the 25%, because a lot of people saying, the MOU was put online, everyone got to see it. You're saying that it wasn't necessary to include the 25% in the MOU because it was understood to be 25%.
Of course, you could imagine all the laws going in the Constitution of Grenada. You could imagine all the laws fitted in this little book here, the Constitution of Grenada. You could imagine all the stories in the biblical times fitting in the Bible, the Holy Bible. Everything fitting in there. No, it is understood that certain things take place, and it's quite clear, my brother, that it was discussed, and they know. If you look at this judgment, for example, the judgment with Irvin McQueen versus the Public Service Commission, when he sued the Public Service Commission for his pension and his gratuity, retirement benefits and so on. It was referenced there, it was validated, it was given legal depth or teeth. This document, this law, the Pension Act, Cap 233, and in there it speaks about gratuity, it speaks about pension. So it is clear, they know that this is something quite knowledgeable to everyone who are in that room.
If it's knowledgeable, to everyone, and the government understands that as much as the union understands that simple fact that it does not need to be reiterated. The 25% does not need to be reiterated. Why is there such a disconnect between that 25%? Why is the government saying, well, it's not 25%? Why is there such a big misunderstanding of a fact, if that is the case?
Well, look, we have heard Dr. Mitchell before. We have heard his administration before. We know of the many grandiose promises they made to the Grenadian people, much less the unions. We have heard from them the promise tablets for children within the schools. They have not received that to date. We know they promised not to tax the Grenadian people because it would, cause serious economic woes or problems to our people. And I can go on and on. I am simply saying the government is disingenuous. Because to come now and offer the teachers and the public officers 2% is a slap in the face. In fact, if Dr. Mitchell and his administration had offered 2.5%, it would have looked closer to 25% than just that 2%. In other words, a better offer should have been made, where you say, okay, because they know the teachers and public officers were asking for that 25%, and it was agreed upon in that room that 25 will be paid. Okay, all you need to do is to say, okay, we can't give you the 25%, but we can give you 15%, 20%, and we'll give you 5% in bonds. In other words, some compromise must be made, but to offer them 2%, come on, man. When you do the calculation, well, they did it. A person who's supposed to get $60,000, $70,000 as gratuity upon their retirement, they're going over $2,000, $3,000. What can that do? In other words, the government is disingenuous. You saw last night, for example, George, on the eve of this very important meeting that we all know happened today, and they put together this 5-point plan in going forward. They would seat, I think, Wednesday or Friday of next week, or Tuesday or Wednesday, sometime next week, to trash out certain things again. It's a good thing, the intervention of the bishop and acting Minister Anthony Boswin, for Labour. That's a good thing. But I'm saying on the eve of that, Dr. Mitchell went on the TV, spitting all kind of rhetoric, and people have deemed him not right in his head. In other words, this man loves war. He loves chaos and confusion. He loves anarchy.
Right.
So, in other words, we are accustomed to that, Junior. We are accustomed to that.
Let us take it into the full context. I have a clip of exactly what the Prime Minister said yesterday. Guys, this is a clip of what was said yesterday. In case you missed it, this is what the Prime Minister, just an excerpt of what the Prime Minister said in the address to the nation yesterday. Check it out.
As it stands now, the nation's children have lost 2 weeks of classroom time in which they would have to have valuable instruction from the teachers. Time lost can never be regained. But sisters and brothers, if this industrial action continues, government is proposing to have learning centers established across the country to provide this critical face-to-face instruction time for students, the future of our country. Furthermore, sisters and brothers, my cabinet colleagues and I, most of whom are former teachers, have all agreed that we'll visit these centers to teach our students. Sisters and brothers, as a former professor of mathematics, I'm prepared to teach mathematics to our children. Minister Gregory Bowen will teach mathematics and physics. Minister Oliver Joseph will teach economics. Minister Pamela Moses is a former English teacher, and she's willing to teach again. Minister Kate Lewis spent more than 17 years teaching. She's prepared to teach the principles of business, accounts, and office administration again. Minister Kendra Maturin taught history, social studies, and English literature. She's prepared to teach the children of Carriacou again. Minister Clarice Modest Cohen taught English and science. Minister Emmeline Pear and Minister Delma Thomas taught at the primary level and they too are ready and willing to teach again. Cabinet members who are not teachers are also prepared to assist in these learning centers to ensure that the interests of our students are well served. We are all prepared to sacrifice our time because we simply cannot allow our children to lose any further. Their future is at stake. The future of this country is at stake. We all must listen to the voices of reason that are out there. The leaders of civil society, the business community, and our religious leaders.
All right, so that was an excerpt of the Prime Minister's speech yesterday on the eve of the negotiation that was held today. We're talking about pension and gratuity and understanding it. Now, while the Prime Minister's speech was happening, I got a chance to look in the chat, and I saw someone said something to the effect that Ridealong standard dropping. I just want to address something, guys. We try to address every aspect of this issue. In fact, today we reached out to a number of people on the other side that could give us their perspective of it, and from who couldn't make it to who declined from coming on. That was the response that we get it on this program. As you well know, that we try to attack the issue on both sides. I'm just trying to get a full understanding and bring that information to the public to have a full understanding. You don't have to believe what Kem Jones said. This is not a Kem Jones ideology program. I'm trying to get the facts, and I would have liked to have it from both sides, but this is not the case. We have Kem Jones, and he's going to give us the information. Now, we also want you to participate in it. We're opening up the phone lines from the beginning of the program. You could call at any time. The phone number that you could call if you object to anything that we're saying, or if you have a different view on what we're saying, we're inviting you to call. So Deanne, if you could just pin the number there, that you could call, the number 718-701-5720. That's 718-701-5720, because we're reacting to the Prime Minister's speech, and we're talking about pension and gratuity and going forward. That is what we're talking about here today. So Kem, go right ahead. What do you think was the mindset of the Prime Minister delivering this speech yesterday on the eve of negotiation with the unions?
Well, how I saw this whole speech and the timing, it's like having two parties raising that white flag. You know, they have been in war or at war for a long time, and they decided, well, boy, we will pull together now, we will surrender, we will not have more war, we will sign some treaty, some agreement for peace and for the betterment of all. And some silly person, some foolish person, someone who just love to see bacchanal, melee, confusion, decided to pick up that gun and shoot again and cause real problems. That is what I saw last night with Dr. Mitchell, the Prime Minister, going on the TV and on radio and, you know, just letting it out in a very confrontational way,
as it stands
an
now,
arrogant way. In fact, I had the biggest laugh of my life last night when he kind of spoke about himself and his ministers abandoning governing the country and going to teach, because I thought, well, boy, something is going wrong with this gentleman. I'm wondering if he's going for the 25% gratuity too, to add to what he already is receiving and the government ministers are receiving. Because if he goes to teach, then they will be negotiating for that 25% gratuity instead of the teachers. So, I mean, it was laughable. I see him as a very good comedian, but mind you, he was tactical, because he wanted to make the people know that it is not Dr. Mitchell agreeing here, but instead the intervention of the bishop and the acting minister of labor. You know, they were able to get this meeting and they would just sit and discuss, but he would not budge. He's sticking to his 2% and nothing more. But it's arrogance. The parties decide to go back to the table. That's a good thing for Grenada. That's a good thing for our children. In fact, you mentioned the children. They missed school for a very long time. That's a good thing for them. We want a level of normalcy, a level of peace to reign in Grenada. It is not a matter of, tit for tat and chaos and confusion. No, we don't want that. So it was a big laugh for me, Junior, a big laugh. I thought Dr. Mitchell was arrogant. He came across as a person who ready to battle and bully people. Because this issue, again, I repeat, it is a bread and butter issue. The teachers and public officers are simply saying they have seen colleagues of theirs who served the government for 35 years and more retire and go home into poverty. Some of them, their houses were put up for sale because they could not have meet the mortgage upon retirement. The gratuities are advance package given to them to cushion that effect. So ultimately, their house will not go up for sale. Ultimately, they will pay their mortgage, pay their rent, pay their utility bills, pay their student loan. Maybe they have 2 or 3 children still going to college or university. This is a bread and butter issue, and it would not only affect the teachers, it will affect all public officers. Because mind you, Dr. Mitchell and the government, they are basing their argument on the People's Law, the Pension Disqualification Act. And that act has been proven to be illegal and void. In fact, in the same court matter that I spoke to you about, that civil appeal number 17 of 1997 between Irvin McQueen and the Public Service Commission, the learned judge there stated very clearly, and in fact his name is Dennis Byron, and we know him due to the CCJ and the referendum and so on. He eventually became the president of the Caribbean Court of Justice. But he stated very, very clearly that this particular act is not in line. It was never in line with the supreme law, which is the Constitution. And the Constitution itself, in section 92, speaks of pension, speaks of defining what is pension. It defines what is a pension here. And look, it's very simple. I could go in here and tell you, my good brother, it says pension benefits means any pensions, compensation, gratuities, or other like allowances of persons in respect of their service as judges or public officers, or for the widows, children, dependents, or personal representatives of such persons in respect of such service. So it's defined here. And then in that judgment, the learned judge here said it is very clear that the Pension Disqualification Act is void to the extent that it is inconsistent with the benefits created by section 84, subsection 8 of the Constitution. In other words, my brother, Dr. Mitchell has to understand these public officers, they must receive the pension, and all they're asking for is an advance. Give them a little gratuity of 25% in advance, and let the pension itself be less, because it would be a less pension. The pension would be a reduced pension. I think that's the right word here. It would be a reduced pension because they would be collecting that gratuity up front, and over 12 years and a half, it will be repaid. Not a loan. It cannot be considered a loan. Yeah. It cannot. It's a gratuity, but it's not a loan. Dr. Mitchell says it's a loan.
What if the government, or what if the country, what if the state is not in a financial position to afford the gratuity? Do you think that the government responsibility is to protect the purse of the state, right? So do you think that the government should bankrupt the country to pay the percentage that is demanded, or do you think that government should negotiate with the unions in the space in which they could afford? Because if it costs $21 million to pay off the 25% gratuity that is requested, and the state, whether it's the what's in the purse, what's available, what could be paid, does not meet up to the $21 million, how would the government obligate themselves to pay the money that they don't have? Shouldn't it be an understanding?
Right. Junior, the government gave the general public this false idea that it will cost the government $21 million and the government has to find that $21 million now, because all the public officers will be retiring this year, next week, next month. And people start believing it is some increment or it's some one-off payment or it's some increase. Brother, we have public officers who are due to retire 25 years from today. We have public officers who are due to retire 10 years from today. We have public officers who are due to retire 2 years from today. What Dr. Mitchell should do, he's a statistician. Well, he claims to be. He is very good with numbers and data, though sometimes he massages them for his own benefit. I am simply saying, give the public some info, a breakdown as to how many public officers will be retiring next year, for example, 2019. How many public officers will be retiring 2020? Or maybe for the next 5 years, and the actual cost. Because it is very clear to the unions that they just throw out a figure out there to scare people. I want to say further, Dr. Mitchell could have found the money to make sure that his son, Olinga Mitchell, who was recently appointed advisor in the Ministry of Finance, a ministry that his father is in charge of, Dr. Mitchell and his administration as Minister of Finance could find the money to pay this soon-to-be ambassador to the Republic of China, for example. We understand that Peter David's daughter name is in the lineup, and he's also the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So she will be, if she's successful, she'll be working for him, more or less advising him and that kind of stuff, working under him. We saw within that whole structural adjustment program, we saw ministers of government receiving an increase of 5% plus 6% when they came into power. They took that 5% that the NDC removed from ministers, deducted from ministers' salary, understanding the economic climate then. They took back that 5% and then they took 6%. In fact, I broke the story. They doubted for a while, and then some of them came out and said, look, we're going to forego that amount of money. We would not take the increase because of X and Y, but many of them took it. Dr. Mitchell and his administration could have found the money to give to constituencies, meaning constituency allowances of $10,000 something dollars. They increased it from $1,500 to $10,800 and something dollars, something thereabout. We are hearing now that Dr. Mitchell intends to adjust his own salary as Prime Minister. In fact, he says, what is $80,000 to pay a Prime Minister? There are people in this country who working for $24,000, $2,000 a month, $24,000 at the end of the year when you add everything together, the annual salary. In other words, Dr. Mitchell could find money for things that he wants to see happen. But when it comes to the bread and butter of teachers, and I can go on and on, give you more examples of the government finding money to handle what they want to handle and hire who they want to hire. We saw the increase in the per secretary in the Prime Minister's office of $1,000 on her already fat salary, and if you calculate it, you're looking at a $12,000 increase.
Well,
$12,000 increase over a 1 year period. In other words, I am saying Dr. Mitchell clearly could find money to do certain things that he wants to do, but when it comes to public officers, he's not interested.
But isn't it also true to state that by offering a smaller gratuity, say it's a 10%, a 2%, a 5%, or whatever it is, up front, but the monthly payment would be higher? Correct?
Yes, it is correct, but here it is, my brother. The public officers, they're not stupid. They know that we have a lot of people retiring, and many of them not even living beyond 65 years. Let us go even further, 70 years. They're dying young. There are claims that people are living longer, but so many public officers are going. So what they are simply saying, I serve you already, give me my advance payment so I can pay my legal mortgage so I would not leave my family indebted. It's simple. Okay, simple example. Do you believe that Dr. Mitchell and his team would accept at this point a reduced gratuity or a reduced salary or a reduced pension? No, they would not, because they understand the importance of a gratuity upon retirement. This one-off payment would cushion the effects, because look, things are tough in Grenada. So if they would not, I would love to see the government, the ministers of government say, okay, we cannot give public officers what they're asking for in terms of gratuity, but we would make that step, that gesture, to demonstrate our love for country and reduce our own gratuity. Because remember, after 4 years, the politician, thanks to the NNP law, that law that the NNP administration passed, the politician would receive some $75,000 plus. So what they can, that's 20% gratuity they're receiving. So let us say they make that change. Boy, we will accept 10% instead of the 20%, to demonstrate their love for country. Things are tough, things are hard, and they would collect that 10% after maybe 10 years or 5 years. Then I could see, well, the playing field is now level. But they're not going to do that, George, or Junior George. Yeah. They're not going to do that.
Yeah. Guys, if you're watching here, we want you to participate in this discussion. As we said, this is a discussion. We want to have it with you. You want you to be a part of it. I want you to call in the number 718-701-5720. We pin the number right there, 718-701-5720. We're talking about pension and gratuity as it relates to the ongoing industrial climate in Grenada. But again, we want you guys to be a part of the discussion. There might be things that you may not understand. I see people are saying, yo, Kem, you're lying. Kem, how you like to lie so?
But here it is, George. It is simple. I took time and I studied the document from the NIS. I wanted to ascertain how much a person is entitled to when they retire from the NIS, because they would have contributed to that scheme. And there's a nice little document that they, presented to the public, questions and answers. And the question was asked, who qualifies for an age pension? Any person who reaches age 60 and made at least 500 contributions, weekly contributions. Every week is considered to be a contribution. So over a 10-year period of you working, you would have contributed 500. You would have made 500 contributions. And it goes further to say, in terms of the questioning, what is the rate of the age pension? 30%, the answer, 30% of the average annual insurable earnings. So in other words, a person who retires and contributes 500, and give 500 contributions to NIS would collect, upon retirement, 30% on their average annual insurable earnings. But if they make more than that, because many public officers, they work for 26 and 2/3 or 30 years, 35 years. For every 50 contributions thereafter, they would get 1%. So a person who makes 550 contributions, they will get 31% of the average annual insurable earnings from the NIS. So a person could get as much as 40-something% from the NIS, but we understand that the unions may have compromised with the pension issue. On my program this morning, for example, folks called in and said, Kem, they're knowledgeable of the fact that the unions would have entered into an agreement with the government regarding the pension itself, where 60% would come from the NIS and 10% would come from the government. I'm still seeking to confirm that. But when 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people are saying this is exactly what they did, then it leaves a number of questions to be asked. In other words, if that is true, then the situation here is that a person who retires and supposed to get from the NIS, for example, 46% from the NIS. And by law, the government's supposed to give, I think, 70% or so pension to the public officer. Then that person can take the government to court and take NIS to court. In other words, we are in a murky situation here,
but
my brother.
That is the question right here. Now, the Prime Minister yesterday said it, and I thought about it after he said it. If this is a legal issue, right? If this is a legal issue, why haven't the union take the government to court?
But the union did so. There are 2 examples of that. I just told you.
No, I'm talking
let's
about.
look at the case
At this point. Yesterday in the address to the nation, the Prime Minister said that. He said it on Friday as well.
Right.
If it's a legal battle right now, why haven't the union taken the government to court in this negotiation process right now?
Well, why should I take you to court for my own, in other words, my own money? Why? It is quite understood that it is my money. So why should I now spend money on lawyers to take you to court for my own cash? Law is precedence, and it is quite understood. There are 2 judgments in favor of the worker, the union, the members of the union. The case involving Irvin McQueen versus the Public Service Commission, and the Armstrong case. It is very clear. I told you, in giving the judgment as it relates to Irvin McQueen, the learned judge stated very clearly, and may I read some aspects of it. The learned judge said, once the distinction between an entrenched constitutional provision and statutory provision is recognized, the answer is clear. A statutory provision cannot remove a benefit conferred by an entrenched clause of the Constitution. Such a benefit can only be removed by amending or altering the Constitution itself. In other words, the Constitution of Grenada, the supreme law of Grenada, states that a pension must be given to the officer who retires after the many years of service. And in the Constitution, it speaks to go to the Pension Act.
Yeah, but
it's
Kem,
there.
The pension is not the non-negotiable at this point. I think they got past the point that the fact that pension have to be paid to those workers. The negotiation is over gratuity. That 25%, that upfront money, that money that they're expecting to receive upfront. That 25 versus that 2%. So I don't think.
But where is that coming from? That's the question. Where is that 25% coming from? Not from the pension itself?
Right, it's coming from the pension, but I think that the negotiation over the pension, yes, I don't think that they're saying that the workers would not and should not receive pension. I think the real negotiation, the hardcore negotiation, is over that 2% versus that 25% upfront payment.
Right, and this is quite understood. We know what the argument is, but I am saying to you, we must put in context this particular struggle. The issue here is the government cannot tell the working people to take the matter to court. He can't. I mean, he could say it, yes, but it's foolish to say so when he himself recognizes that they have a right to a gratuity and to that pension. He recognizes that. So I am saying, he's saying, we cannot give you 25%. We could give you 2%. The unions are saying, no, 2% is not enough. 25% is what we want. Okay. The question here is, how do we go about honoring that? I explained to you. The unions are not going to negotiate with the government to reduce that pension or reduce that gratuity. They're negotiating the method in which they would get that money. would it be 15% bonds to mature in 5 years after retirement and 10% cash? In other words, it is simple like that. I am simply saying there is a need for the government to understand the plight of the teachers and the public officers. They do not want to retire into poverty. All they are saying is it is conventional. Ask any public officer, junior, who retired before 1983, April the 4th. Who started working, sorry, who started working before 1983, April the 4th, 1983, when the Pension Disqualification Act of 1983 came in. The question here is, ask them, what did they receive upon retirement? There was no argument. They received a gratuity, and ask them how much, what percentage you received.
Right, I'm guessing that they would say 25%.
One sec, permit me. They received a gratuity, and they also collecting a pension, as I read a while ago, from NIS of 30% or more, and they're collecting that 70% pension from the government. So why should it be different with persons or people who joined the service after 1983, April the 4th, 1983? In fact, that is why I reference that judgment, because law is about precedence, where the judge, or the judges I should say, the chief judge of the OECS Supreme Court of Appeal and the two other judges, they stated clearly that the law upon which the government today is relying on, the Pension Disqualification Act, it is void. It has no legitimacy, no legal, merit. So I am simply saying, what we're dealing with is the Constitution. What we're dealing with is the Pension Act. In fact, you should take a read in the Pension Act. It speaks about the maximum pension to be given and to be given to us. Is there?
Right.
So in other words, simply saying, Baba, this is not a tit for tat to me, Kem Jones saying government this or workers this. No, I am a fighter for the people. And I am saying I have seen too many workers after 30-something years of service to the government retire into poverty. You understand the point?
Right.
Yeah, I think I would have missed my program there, but I just boy. All right, go ahead.
Okay, all right. We're gonna. I know you have to go, Kem. With 5 minutes short of doing the program. Kem has to do his program as well. But Kem, I mean, yeah. I think
I doubt I will be able to do my program.
Oh, you doubt you'll be able to do it?
Yeah, because of the time lapse.
Oh Lord, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have tuned in long before, but you know it goes.
Oh, sorry about that, Kem.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, where we are right now is a better place than where we was last week, right? I mean, minus the fact yesterday, my personal opinion, when I saw the footage with the Prime Minister, I'm going to put it up on screen again. For one, I thought it was poor judgment, and whoever's watching from the Prime Minister's side, whoever advised the Prime Minister to give that particular speech, there is a lot wrong with this, with a lot of things that I'm seeing there. For one, as a videographer, his background is just too distracting.
Right.
And right. If you want to deliver an important message, I don't think you want to add to the distraction. I think the background was just way too distracting. I'm looking at the building, I'm looking at the top of this building, I'm looking at all kind of other stuff. One. The second thing is that I don't think the timing was right. And it begs a lot of questions. Like, how long would this program, how long would they be teaching, how long the 15 members of parliament be teaching the classes? It's a lot of questions. So a lot was wrong with the presentation yesterday. But today, I think we are in a better place than we were yesterday and the day before. I want to just play this. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to say something before you move on.
Yeah.
It is important to note, because somebody was asking, and I just take a little look on your Facebook page itself. Somebody was asking whether or not these workers will continue working after they get it 25%. I think it is a kind of misunderstanding there. people believe, and still there are people who believe, that the workers will be collecting this 25% gratuity now, next week, next month. So they're fighting for this money. They're getting a lump sum money now. A gratuity is given upon retirement. So when a worker retires, they serve for the 26 and 2/3 years or 30 years or 35 years, they will collect the gratuity as a package to go home with, and it's coming from the pension, so they would get a reduced pension. Look, some people are arguing and say, well, why not just give them the full pension? But it would work out to pretty much the same thing, you know, Baba.
Yeah.
It's just that the government is stubborn. It would work out to pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
But they just want to advance so they could, you know, at least pay off their mortgage if they have to, pay their loans, you know, the student loan maybe for the children, be able to, you know, buy basic items, pay the utility bills, you know, things of that sort. I mean, who could be against the workers for saying, look, when I retire, instead of you giving me full pension, meaning all the money there, and I may not even live to see 70 years or 75 years, give me a package up front so I can at least retire with dignity and continue living.
Yeah.
You know,
that is a valid point, and I hear that, and I respect the workers for seeking, and I respect the union for standing up for the workers. But I'm also saying that if the government position is that it's gonna bankrupt the country, the economy of the country, and if that is true, if that is the facts, we're not talking about if they sponging on some numbers. If that is the fact, and the government is coming to the workers on the negotiation table and say, listen, 25% is really gonna capsize the economy. It's not gonna work. Could we work out a smaller upfront? Could we work out at 10%? I think that the union and the workers should see how they could meet on that half, 17%.
And I agree with you. I agree with you that there must be some compromise along the way, because the unions, they have already compromised on the pension issue by saying we are in a structural adjustment program. Though the law says you have to give me 70% and I have to get 30% or more from the NIS, we would still compromise somewhat, and let us see how we can come up with some formula. And eventually they came up with some formula, because I told you about what people are actually, you know, ciphering from this whole pension issue. 60% NIS, 10% government. You know, there has been some compromise there. I don't know the exact figure. It is 70%, but I don't know if government is 40%, NIS 30%. Some people saying 60, NIS 10% government. We will find all that. But I heard from the union that they have compromised, they have bent over backwards, all in the interest of country and in the interest of, you know, our people. Things are tough, things are hard, people are asked to make sacrifice. Okay, great.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking
but I am saying there must be some form of compromise along the way. And that is why they're back at the negotiating table or the negotiation table. And let us hope that even if the government say, okay, I can't give you 25%, but I can give you 15% or 12.5% of cash.
Yeah.
And I can give you 12.5% bonds, meaning some paper, some promissory note, which says this would mature 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, and you would get cash for it. You can just cash it in. In other words, it would be something that I think people will welcome, because ultimately they will be getting that advanced cash of 15% and 10% bonds, which would eventually give them cash over a 5-year period, for example. Yeah. And maybe they can do it matriculatively, where they say, okay, I would give you 10% cash, meaning the gratuity of 10% in advance, and I would give you, when you reach 62 years, I'll give you 5% bond.
Hello?
Yeah.
That would mature
Hi,
when you're 62 years, and I would give you
Hold on, Kem,
next
Kem, hold on.
5% when it's, you know, something of that sort.
Kem, hold on 1 quick second. Caller, you live?
Yeah.
Yeah, caller, you live? Where you calling us from?
Hi, Junior. My name's Sergeant Mark. I'm calling from
I am not here in the call.
Calabash, North Carolina.
Yeah, hi. How you doing?
Very good, very good. You're looking very you're looking sharp tonight.
Thank you. What's your contribution on the topic?
Well, you know, I wanted to call in because it didn't look like many people were calling in, and I'm just sorry to hear that.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second, caller.
Sure.
Kem, I'll translate it back to you. Lower your background audio, Kem, because it's affecting the background here.
All right.
Yeah, I'll tell you what he's saying. Yeah, caller, go ahead.
Again, hi, Junior and Kem. This is Sergeant Mark from Calabash, North Carolina.
Oh, Sergeant Mark. Yes, sir. How you doing?
Very good, very good. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you for
I'm
calling
very
in.
sorry to hear
Yeah.
the situation in the beautiful country of Grenada, and I don't have a solution to the problem. But you know, right here recently in the United States, we had the same problem.
Okay.
We weren't taking care of our teachers,
Wow.
and they went out on strike.
Yeah. I mean,
And,
the workers need to be treated fairly. Teachers work hard. I mean, everybody work hard. They go there, you work hard, you contribute your life to it, and everybody expect when you get old, the work that you put in now should take care of you when you can't work anymore. So, I mean, straight across the board, workers need to be compensated. Pension is a great relief for workers, and hopefully they could get past that gratuity, and the workers could be paid sufficiently enough so they could take care of what they have to take care of and live a good retirement life. But thank you, Sergeant. We appreciate your call.
Yes. Thank you. Keep up the good work. God bless you, and I hope you work out the problem.
Thank you so much, Kem. That's a caller. That's a caller here from the U.S. He always watched the show. Sergeant Mark. He just wanted to say, hope things get worked out and all of that other stuff. But Kem, I wanted to touch on this thing because I was saying where we were yesterday and the day before is not where we are today. Folks, if you were paying attention to the news and what's been happening, the members of the union heads and the government negotiating team met today, and it look as if things are going pretty well. I have a video excerpt from Now Grenada. Credit to Now Grenada for producing that content footage. I want to show it back to you guys and to show where we are today and where it possibly might look as it might go very well going forward in the next couple days and weeks. Check this out. We'll be talk about it on the other end.
Let me say that the meeting was very cordial. Both sides understand what is involved here. They do understand that no solution could be arrived at today. I think that might have been the misconception that we're coming today to find, a solution to the issue. It is a negotiating process that have been initiated today. And the parties have agreed that by next Tuesday, certain documentation will be provided. So at least they could look at the document, look at all the simulations, look at all the figures. And next Friday, they will meet again to determine, exactly how we go forward.
Today's meeting for us at GUT signals a resumption of talks on this pressing matter of pension, and in particular the issue of gratuity. We have always maintained as GUT, as a team, that we are open to discussions. We are ready to be at the table once the other side is willing.
The unions and staff associations showed an extremely high level of maturity that we are known for. Because coming out of last night, probably people expected us to respond differently, right? But we want to give the population the assurance that our main interest and our only interest is to resolve this matter so that our retirees can go home with something that is sustainable to them.
And we would encourage our workers, don't be dismayed, but remain focused. This is about one thing. This is about workers receiving the benefits that they have worked for. It is not a worker begging It is not a worker asking for something that he or she is not entitled to. This is a retirement package. This is a retirement benefit that we're speaking about. It says to us that this person would have given their life as a career in public service. And so what we need to do now is to find that road that we can walk, that all parties involved could be happy with, and that the country could move forward.
We want our members to be able to leave the public service with a pension that enables them to live a dignified life. A pension that allows them as senior citizens to be economically sustainable, to have economic viability within their senior ages, and a standard of living that is respectable.
That's where we want to be, addressing the real issues. I don't want to go back in the past. I don't want to go back in the past, but forge ahead, right, with that single purpose of or single objective of getting that matter resolved so that people can retire
in comfort.
In comfort.
Again, I'd like to thank Now Grenada. Check them out online, nowgrenada.com, for they put that footage out. That was from today. So, Kem, by learning the temperature now, we're testing the temperature now, and the temperature seems kind of not even lukewarm, it's kind of cool a little bit. Everyone is talking good sense. The union are talking good sense, forgetting what the past was, now looking towards the future. Is that where we should have been weeks ago? And do you think that that spells good for going forward in tackling this very burning issue?
This, to me, is a good step in the right direction. It shows that Anthony Boswin, who is now the acting Minister of Labour, he's a competent person, he's a results-based oriented person, though he was not treated fairly when the appointments were given in the initial stage, but he's still relevant. The Minister of Labour could not have gotten the job. He's somewhere out in the United Arab Emirates, but at the end of the day, I think Tone as he's called, he's getting the job done, and we are all happy. And with the intervention of His Lordship, the Bishop, here in Grenada, I think they have done a wonderful job in getting the unions back to the table, where we can find some solution. I saw a 5-point strategy or plan in going forward. I think Tuesday, they would report to one another. On Friday, they would sit. Next week, that's next week, huh? Yeah. They would sit and see how they can come up with some formula. Because really and truly, this thing is not a biggie, in my view. And that's just a youthful slang or word here. It's quite understood that when a worker gives off 30, 35 years of service and retires, many times that worker has mortgage to pay or some loan. That worker now who retires has to visit the doctor more frequently, has to visit the pharmacy more often, and so on. So they need that little money to get them by. And look, I know of a lot of workers who are afraid that they would not live for very long after the retirement. So as a result, if they get the little upfront one-off gratuity, well, not one-off, but a gratuity, sorry, that advance package, they'll be able to do things with it, and then they get a reduced pension, and they have no problem with that, because when they complete that, if they live to see 12 years and a half, that's about 72 years and a half, let's say almost 73 years, then they would start to get their full pension from there on. And they have no problem with that. But all they are simply saying, the time has come for the government to understand. They have seen their brothers, their colleagues who they work with, retire, and their house go up for sale, and their problem. I want to say something before you come in. This struggle is not a struggle between teachers and the government. Teachers are only taking the lead. It is a struggle for gratuity between all public officers. So police officers, they're in this thing too, you know. Yeah. nurses are in this thing too. Prison officers, they're in this thing too. So I am simply saying I am happy to see that the union leaders and the minister, the acting minister, and I hope he remains Minister of Labor, not just acting, but Minister of Labor, and I hope that they can resolve this thing in the best interest of the children, the students who want to complete their SBAs, who want to make sure that the CPEA exam, you know, is well on its way, and all the little assessments and so on that they have to do. And mind you, my brother, I hope the government would not touch the money of the public officers, the teachers, and public officers generally. They threaten to deduct the salaries of workers. They would come with some formula, some tabulation for every day, the cost for every day, and deduct that from teachers and public officers' salary. That would hurt them. I just hope that would not happen, because I researched sometime in 2000, late 2000, as the first time the NNP really did that to some teachers. So I hope they would not do that this time around.
Yeah, and again, you know, I think we could breathe a little sigh of relief from the footage that we saw today. I personally spoke to Mr. Roberts. I asked her, you know, coming out of the negotiation table, how do you feel? I mean, she said that the new Minister of Labor, acting Minister of Labor, you know, they have a better working relationship, and it looks positive. So I'm assuming that everything would work out. I'm also hoping that they don't fall at loggerhead again when or if the government decide, and I hope the government don't decide, which they already said that action was already taken in Parliament to deduct the salaries, that may put everything back into a tailspin again. So
yeah,
it looks as
that
if,
would,
yeah,
that would escalate the whole thing, because remember, you have teachers and public officers who depend on their salary to pay their mortgage, to pay their utility bills, to just get by. And many a times when they're finished with paying their mortgage and paying the utility bills and buying little groceries or buying a gas for their vehicle, they have less than nothing remaining. So you could imagine government removing, for example, $300 or $400 for 3 or 4 or 5 days of the strike. That would affect the salary, and not only the salary, but their mortgage, their rent, their utility bills, the food. You know, that would affect them adversely. So I just hope that the government is prudent enough to rethink this particular move, because it's a spiteful one.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine way in 2000 that was done, and it's barbaric too, though, because to work out that deduction, it would cost the government more, because it's a system that they have developed that costs the government a lot of money to develop, where it's kind of automated system where they know the salaries already of these people. They don't have to beat up themselves. They enter the information into the computer and so on, because it's a kind of database that they have. So to hire auditors from outside and accountants from outside, from my research, you know, I try to investigate and get to know certain information. It would cost the government a huge amount of money to just do that. It might be even more.
But why can't they not just find out how much teachers, how many days the teachers didn't work, and then just deduct the daily payment? I don't see it being a big calculation, but if that's what it is.
No, but Junior, you have to understand, the government has a system. I just forget the name of the system.
Right.
You know, it's not done as easy like we think. You know, that you just come with a calculator and you deduct the amount. That's not the case.
Okay.
They have a system. Remember when payments were late, I think, sometime recently, and they said they were switching from one system to a new system.
Right.
And that was the reasons, you know, around the late payments of salaries.
Okay. All right.
Right. So again, it's not an easy thing to do. So, you know, I am just simply saying, the workers, they strike, but it will be malicious on the part of the government to go ahead and take that money, because people could argue, well, Tobias Clement, for example, he was never a minister for 5 years. He was a member of parliament, and still he was working at St. George's University. But Dr. Mitchell decided to pay him still as a minister of government, though he was not. Would you now go and ask Tobias Clement to repay that money and give back that money? I'll give you another example. The government normally gives tuition support to students. Okay, well, they were out from school for how many days? 9 days? Or 10 days, whatever the amount? Would they go and deduct that money because they would just say, well, okay, they did not go to the school for those days, and as a result, they did not pay transportation support. They did not pay the transport, the bus or whatever, so I'm going to deduct the money. I mean, it's foolish to think that the government would go as far as to deduct and take the people's money.
In that case, Kem, isn't it important that the union have strike funds or funds in there that in situation like that they have that monies that they could pay the workers? Isn't that something that's supposed to be enshrined in the constitution of the union, that have those funds there? Rainy day funds, strike funds, whatever you want to call it.
It's laughable because Keith Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell, the Prime Minister, he's talking about strike fund now. The question is, how many times did the union strike in this country? And the question further is, how many times the government decided to take money from the salaries of public officers? That's the question, because again, it's precedence. Again, it's convention. Since in 2000, they did that. How many times between 2000 and now we had strike actions in Grenada? We had many strike actions in Grenada within that period of time. The government never ever was that vindictive and wicked to take money from teachers and public officers' salary. But lo and behold, because they have absolute power, and indeed absolute power corrupts, they have all the seats. Just like in 1999 when they won all the seats, and in 2000 they deduct money from workers' pay, teachers, I think, because they went on strike. The question is, how many times have they done that since 2000? How many times? All of a sudden they're doing it now. It is spite work. It is wickedness. It is being vindictive. You want to hurt teachers and public officers economically because they know they have to pay their mortgage. They know they have to pay their rent. They know they have to pay their utility bills. They know they have to buy food to eat. They know that they have to live. And they know that they're already working for a very small salary.
Yeah, but
so they want to hurt them.
I know, I understand that. I understand
There's a need for some level of compassion, a need for some level of understanding here. You don't do that to workers. No.
Yeah, but I understand that. But I still think that the union should have some kind of, whether you call it strike fund, rainy day fund, money put aside, whatever you want to call it, but funds that are allocated for situation where you might have something that happened. A member house might burn down, that you could take those funds and probably give it to the worker. Somebody might meet in an accident, need medical services.
Yeah, without cutting you.
Yeah.
You heard what the president of the GUT said. If the government goes ahead and deduct the money from the salaries of teachers, for example, the teachers will stop doing the extra stuff that they were never hired to do. For example, sporting events where they would collect some monies at the door or money at the door. They would sell drinks, they would raise funds, they would have school fair and party and, you know, the usual activities to raise funds. That would cut. And the funds that they normally raise is to buy furniture, you know, desks and chairs, dusters, chalk, just name it. Another example, all the extra activities, the debates, the different groups and the different activities that they would have. They would not engage in that. The SBAs to be mapped. The teachers are not employed to map SBAs, but they do it anyways because it's understood that they work in the interest of the students and they want to make sure they pass their grade and pass their subjects and so on. The CPEA assessments and so on, because it's a continuous thing. They are saying we will not do that because if we are going the extra mile when we're not supposed to, and now we strike and you want to take out $300 or $400 from our salary, do you expect us to go? So the government will lose more in the process. So it would be prudent for the government not to deduct, as they say, docking, to take out money from from the teachers and public officer salary. It will be foolish.
We got a call.
You know, Dr. Mitchell.
Hold on a second, sorry. We
Yeah.
got a call coming in. Caller, where you calling us from?
I'm calling you from Canada.
Calling from Canada. Kem, are you hearing the caller?
I'm not hearing, but you know, maybe you can
Yeah,
kind of
I'll
summarize
translate it back to you. Go ahead, caller. Calling from Canada.
The problem in Grenada is that the problem is more. The problem is that we're not addressing the politics properly.
Okay, how should we address
Now we have to go to the genesis of the problem.
Okay.
The problem starts with the revolution.
Okay, the problem starts with the revolution.
Right. I'm taking it from slippery slope. Now, from the revolution, the PRG, what they did, they took over the civil service.
Right.
And they took away workers' rights. Now, when they took away the workers' rights, the union didn't stand up for the work. Because you had men like Chester and who was close to the revolution.
Right.
Maybe they were part of the Central Committee too. But the workers were naive and some were scared. Because any worker had rebelled at the time will go in jail.
Uh-huh.
And they will call them counter-revolutionary and CIA. Then, when the revolution fell, Mr. Brafitt was an interim prime minister. He didn't restore it. The Americans select and elect Blaze in the first election.
Right.
Blaze is an ultra right-wing politician. Blaze never support workers. Blaze was for the so-called white Grenadian planter. We know that. He was just a front. So what he did, he loved that law, what the PRG made. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening. We have like about 4
he loved
more
the
minutes.
law.
So you.
Because he's an ultra right-wing conservative.
Okay.
So what he did, he tried to validate the law. And the living politicians today, I go call all of them names. Francis Alexis, Kit Mitchell, Tillman Thomas, Enzel, something St. Louis. St. Louis is the name.
Okay.
All these guys, they were in Blaise Parliament when Blaise validated the law. And then they never rebel when Blaise said politicians should get pension. Workers were naive. As black people, we don't live for the future. So we never prepare for old age. So after that, after Blaise fall, the NDC came back.
Mm-hmm.
And they came. Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening, caller.
Hello?
I'm listening.
When the NDC came back when Kit Mitchell defeated Blaise in the convention and Blaise broke Parliament, then he died. When he died, Ben Jones called the election a couple months after under the TNP.
Okay, caller. Okay, I don't mean to rush you. Right? And you're giving some real good historical facts, right? But I want you to just kind of go into the main aspect of the point so that we could kind of wrap up soon. Because we have about 4 more minutes. So if you could just kind of wrap up. I mean, I appreciate the historical lesson.
What I see going on?
Yeah.
I think we are in for a dictatorship.
Okay.
Because we have Chester and Peter David, who are the genesis of the problem in the NMC.
Okay. So you're saying we heading for a dictatorship?
History, the Governor General is also a bad omen in our history. From the La Grenade back to Grenada is in bad state. We heading for a dictatorship.
Okay. All right, thank you, caller. We appreciate your historical point. I mean, I sincerely, I didn't mean to rush you, and I appreciate the historical value. I love to listen to history. Kem, it was a lot there to digest and bring it out to you. You may have to watch that segment and listen to what he said. But he started to talk about, the whole problem. We need to look at it from the revolution. And he spoke about Ben Jones. He spoke about Nicholas Brathwaite. He spoke about Hubert Blaze and how it's a lot. It's a lot to digest. But essentially, what he's saying that we're heading to a dictatorship because of the people who are in position right now.
Well, it is very clear that when you give one party all the seats, and not only this time round, but 3 times, eventually the leader and those who are part of that grouping would believe that they have absolute power and they can do anything, anytime to the people.
Well, not to cut you there, Kem, but they might. Someone on the other side might say that no one gave it to them in their hands. It was democratically elected government, as far as they would say. So it wasn't given to them.
I'm not arguing that. I am simply saying we need to, in going forward, be smarter how we do things. Because, for example, last night when Dr. Mitchell was speaking, I see comments like, he's mad, he's crazy, he's this, he's that. And then some people say, the people who voted for him to give him all this power, they're the ones you should accuse of being X, Y, and Z. But I am simply saying the caller speaking about dictatorship, you see, it comes from having absolute power. And you believe that because you have all 15, you can do anything to the working people and everybody. But what you would find, people would revolt. And we don't want anarchy and chaos, but people would push back and say, no. Here you have a situation where Dr. Mitchell knows, and many people in the country, those in authority, they know that many people are retiring back into poverty. And what can help to prevent that from happening is to make sure upon retirement they get the little gratuity, that little package to go home with, and a reduced pension, but something good enough to keep them going every month, month to month. They all know the workers need that. So what they need to do is to compromise if they have to, come up with a formula. 2% is really not right to offer these people.
Right.
There is a need to come up with a formula to make sure that the workers get a package to go home with. Look, I don't envy the politician, but just as the politician could pass a law to make sure that they get a gratuity, and in fact, Dr. Mitchell himself would give reasons why that was done. And other ministers, they would say, well, look, 4 years is a short stint, and when they complete that 4 years or 5 years, they may not be re-elected, and they need to survive. They need to stay afloat. They have bills to pay and that kind of stuff. It's a similar thing with the working people. They work for 30 years, and when they retire, they just want a little package to go home with to meet their mortgage commitment, their bills, their utility, just name it. And the politicians are getting there, so give the public officers theirs. It's simple like that. So I would hope, my brother, that some formula would be, derived to at least say to the worker, okay, you're retiring after working for me for 35 years or 30 years, because there will be officers who will work for at least 40 years of the government. I want to say to you, I'm not able to give you 25% in cash one time, but I'm giving you 15% in cash. And I want you to take this because you have retired, you're 60 years now, 15% in cash, and I'm giving you 10% in bonds.
Yeah.
And after 5 years of your retirement, you can come and cash it in and get your money. So at least you would have that assurance of 25% gratuity in all. So cash and bonds. And that's just my take.
No, I like that. I like the idea. I even mentioned that yesterday, that some of the workers might be interested in investment, high yielding investment. some people might get the 25% or the 15% and put it into a bank. And when you put that into your savings account, that don't yield 2 cents per year, or there's no high yielding in that. So you might find workers that may want to take that 25% and invest it into high yielding interest bond or something. You know what I mean? So that 25%, say they put 10,000 in an interest bond on an investment, that might yield $20,000 or $30,000 in the next year or so, 2 years or so. So I think that should be proposed. That definitely should be proposed, because I'll be interested. Why put $50,000 in a bank and it just sits there? It doesn't move. If I could put $40,000 in some kind of bond, I'll gladly do it, because I mean I have to pay for the money.
My brother, we are on the same page, because what we want to see is a resolution to this impasse, this industrial impasse. And we also, and I say we because I believe you want to see our people retire with some level of dignity, not back into poverty, but in a comfortable position where they can meet their mortgage, their rent, their utility bills, and just survive, live a decent life after retirement. So we are thinking pretty much the same thing. Why not come up with a formula to give these people at least a 15% gratuity in terms of cash, and the rest in bonds? And I saw on your Facebook there, my good friend Elimus Gilbert asking you to ask me why I hate the Prime Minister. I have always said I was never thought to hate anyone. Maybe you don't like my gesticulation, maybe you don't like my tonation, maybe you don't like my usage of words. But at the end of the day, I was never taught to hate. I was taught to love, and I'm the only person in Grenada who would say it as is and who would take on the status quo, the Prime Minister and his whole bunch. I'm the only person here. There are people who are cowards in Grenada. In fact, I said, Junior George, if you go to a supermarket in Grenada and you see a product named Coward, you don't even have to guess where it's made. It's made in Grenada. That's where that product is made. So there are a lot of people who are afraid to say it as is and take on the issues and take on those in authority. In fact, I was threatened with lawsuit from Dr. Mitchell twice, and it yielded no benefits to him. In other words, I am simply saying I am not a hater. I don't hate Keith Mitchell or any of his ministers. I would say it as is, and I would look at the issue straight in the face. I am here really to speak on behalf of the people, because there are people who are voiceless, who are afraid to do so.
Yeah. I mean, where you said that, if you look at a product on the shelf and it says Coward made in Grenada, I think I stand among that few bunch that not a part of that Coward bunch, because
no, and I endorse that. I believe you are courageous. You continue to do an excellent program out there.
Yes.
You look at the issue straight in the face, and you try to pull people from all different sides to voice their opinion and share. And it's really a true expression. It's a platform for true expression where we all can freely express ourselves. Look, there are people, when I do my program, they would say all manner of nasty, dirty things against me. They don't even know me. They don't even know my middle name. They don't even know where I'm from. They don't even know Kem Jones. But still,
because some might say because you
they will hit on him too. So that's kind of normal in this business.
Yeah, because some might say that the rhetoric that you spill at the Prime Minister is some of what you get back.
And nothing is wrong with that. I'm tolerant.
Right.
I'm very tolerant. I'm in this business long enough to know that there will be people who would, hate me, and there will be people who would not. I went to St. George's, for example, and the lady, she was like using derogatory terms against me, and she fell in a drain, more or less, in St. George's. And I had to run and pick her up and say, Madam, I don't hate you, At the end of the day, I may say certain things, and you may dislike it. So be it. I know I said certain things on my program, for example, and some people kick against it. And then, when they're in the problem, they send a message to me and say, Kem Jones, I want you to speak about this for me. It's affecting me. The government did this to me, and X, Y, and Z. And then I still speak on their behalf, because I have a platform for that kind of venting. But at the end of the day, we got to do what we got to do, brother.
Right.
The
It's not about
stage is
hate.
broad enough for wide enough for everybody.
It's about love. We all share the same rock, and we all have to protect the rock. I think that your perspective, although some people might look at it as different, I always like your vision of what you see, and you're not afraid to express it. I don't always agree with you, however, but
And that's the beautiful thing about democracy.
yes, but I listen to you, and the things that I don't agree with, I know that I don't agree with. But I think
Right.
we could have this relationship where I could still call you, or you could call
course.
me, or I could speak to the Prime Minister, or I could speak to any member on the NNP side. Similarly, I could speak to any member on the NDC side, and I'm non-partisan. I try to don't get tied up in the politics of it. Although people might always try to get in the politics.
You know, my brother, without cutting you, here I am. My program should be on now, meaning from 8 to 9, and I sacrificed that because, in the heat of things, I forgot to connect, so to speak, because I operate from a remote studio. I have my studio at home here where I do my program, and it has to connect with the main grid. But here I am, sacrificing that because I understand the importance of your program. I understand that listeners are out there, though they have different opinions, different viewpoints and everything of that sort, but they want to learn. And you may not agree with me, but at least, there might be something that you might, pull from what I am saying and learn from it, because we all are in this together. What I strive to see and what I want to see in this country is for workers to be respected and for Grenadians to be respected. Not because you are elected and you have all the power in your hand, so to speak. You're a part of the executive branch or the legislative branch. You can just walk on people, trample over people. I am fearless. I stood up in the past. In fact, before the program started, you were asking me, my good friend, why I left the NNP. And I'm the only young person in the 21st century, so to speak, maybe I'm taking this credit, to stand up to Dr. Mitchell and the NNP and challenge them on a constitutional matter. And I did not wait for any, one to get me out. I just decided to leave and denounce and move away from the NNP. And I know very much. I know plenty of things about the NNP and Dr. Mitchell. I've been around long enough. I was the youngest executive member of the NNP. But I'm simply saying, look, times change. People move on. If you realize that something is not healthy for you, you move on. I know these people like a tea. So I am simply saying that I am the right person to take on NNP, Dr. Mitchell, and the administration at any given time. If they do something good, look, I'll be the first to talk about it.
Yeah, that's how it should be. That's how it should be. Not just oppose for opposing's sake. But Kem, I thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And you went extended, and you missed your program, and we really appreciate that. Keep with the vision. But last question I have for you: do you have any political agenda up ahead? Could we be looking at Kem Jones possibly getting involved in party politics, forming his own party, or being a part of ministerial agenda for the NDC or any other party going forward, probably for the next election?
I am not interested in frontline politics. I know my vocation. I was called to be a part of this platform, a platform of true expression, where I can educate, inform, edify, empower. I have 2 good programs. I have been around for like a good 4 years, 5 years in this business. I could have been out there in the region replicating initiative that I have done for SIDIMA. I worked in the National Disaster Management Agency for some time. I had a very good initiative that they wanted to replicate. In fact, they have offered me to come on board and replicate it in the many islands throughout the region. I turned down that. I have a vocation. I have a calling. In other words, I'm here when the other people who's supposed to be here talking and speaking on behalf of the Grenadian people, they're cowards, they're afraid, they're not doing it. This is my vocation. You could imagine not having a Kem Jones around on radio. You have many of the talk show programs, they are pro-government in Grenada or pro-NNP. Here you have one program that's different. You get a different side where you have a robust intellectual conversation via radio. So I know my vocation. I'm not interested in frontline politics. I'm not interested in running for anything, That's not Kem Jones. That's not me.